Thank you, everyone. We are about to begin our Syracuse City School District budget hearing. With us, Superintendent Tony Davis, CFO Mike Panchenko. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And with me, I have Councilors Marty Nave, Rashida Caldwell, Pat Hogan, and Patrona Jones-Rouser. And you've got the floor. Oh, you gotta read it. We are at page 273, if anybody's wondering.
First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for the time to present our budget to you. I'm actually going to turn things over to Chief Panchenko and let him go through the PowerPoint, and then we'll be honored to answer any questions that you have in regards to the budget.
So in front of you, you have a handout of the PowerPoint that was presented to the school board last Thursday, and then this budget was approved by the school board on Friday. It was a quick turnaround time. We did not hear from our legislature in terms of what our allocation is going to be regarding our state aid, which is a little over 80% of our budget, till Friday evening at 5:30 on the 19th. It was a little bit different than what we were anticipating, so we had to make some quick adjustments. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the community input and involvement, the state budget release and our state aid, and what our revenue and expenditure overview is going to look like this year. So one of the things that we pride ourselves in the school district is community involvement. What we did was we put out what's called the Balancing Act, and this was done online. And as you can see that we had 572 total responses to the Balancing Act. We also met with the Superintendent's Parents Council and went over our budget with them, and we also met with students. Students was the biggest eye-opener when you listen to what the students have to say, which was a great experience. From the community input, there are 3 top priorities that the community felt that we need to focus on: reading intervention, mental health supports, and math intervention. And these are things that the district moved money and adjusted our budget to make sure that we're addressing these needs. In terms of the state budget and education highlights, the state budget is a $35.9 million budget, 24.9 is in foundation aid. The hang-up that we had with regard to our foundation aid was that the normal procedure is to use the CPI index of the inflation factor of our funding, which would have been 4.1%. The governor came out with her budget at 2.4% originally, and there was discussions going back and forth. The end result was it ended at 2.8%, which was about a $6 million decrease in what we anticipated had we got the 4.1% of the CPI. The other thing that we requested was that special education, career technical education services. Right now, they do not provide CTE support for 9th grade students, additional aid. We went to the legislator and asked for that since all of our CTE programs start at 9th grade, but we don't get funding until 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So that was about a $2 million difference of funding that we were hopeful for that we did not receive. The continuation of community schools and contract for excellence set aside are also still within this. What that means is that $14.6 million of our funding, our foundation aid, needs to go to community schools set aside, and $18.1 million needs to go toward contract for excellence. So those funds are set aside for those initiatives within our foundation aid. The removal of the hold harmless, safe harmless proposal was also something that the governor removed from her original plan, which means that if your foundation aid goes down based upon the calculations in the past, you would be held harmless and your funding would not go down. That was the hang up that a lot of the other school districts were having as well because they were losing foundation aid. That hold harmless has also been reinstated for this year, so our foundation aid did go up about $17 million. There's also an increase in transportation aid based upon the CPI increase. We have a rise in McKinney-Vento students, which are homeless students. As we know, this community is experiencing a lot more homelessness than we have in the past, post-COVID, in the pandemic. So the transportation for these students has increased tremendously because now they're in a lot of different areas outside the city of Syracuse, and we're responsible for transporting them to and from to school and to home.
Mike, I have a quick question.
Yes.
How many, by chance, do you have the number of how many community Vento kids we have?
Last count, I think it was around 2,400. We can get that for you, but that is probably about the number that, and again, these kids may not be, and families may not be homeless, but if they're living with a relative or that kind of thing, they're considered homeless. And that does affect our transportation tremendously.
Absolutely.
And it's grown significantly.
Yes, it has. Yes, thank you.
Along Councilor Cotswell question, there's a lot of refugees coming in. What's the percentage in the district?
I think our ELL is about 20%.
20%?
Yes. And our special education is a little over 20% as well.
Just a note for that. Many of those students that you're referring to are newcomers, which requires more resources,
Of course.
to make sure they're getting the support that they need.
Mr. Superintendent, where do we find student and teacher security and safety in this budget?
Throughout. So what we've done is we've added different positions and things to cover security measures in buildings.
Which department, when I'm looking at this, like, under what resources?
I don't know if you'll see that level of detail in this presentation, but we did build it in. I don't know if it shows up in this actually,
Right,
this
so-
presentation, but we did build in, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. We added guards to elementary schools so that in many cases when parents enter a building, there's nobody there to greet them and they can go any particular way they wanted to go in a building. We're putting guards in each of the elementary schools to make sure that somebody's greeting people as they enter the schools.
So I got to ask you this question because we had a chance to meet.
Sure.
So back in January, a teacher, now a former teacher, wanted to meet with me privately. And she had a big problem. She was a former teacher. She lost her job because she fought back, defended herself. She was assaulted by a student. She fought back. She was terminated. Okay, she was terminated. Then she also said this to me. You can walk into that school with an armed weapon and no one's gonna stop you or question you.
So
This
so
is not-
Marino,
sorry,
I don't want to cut
but
you off.
what
Hold
the
on,
question
Marino.
was, you know where it was? It was at Lincoln Middle School, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention now because I wanted to tell you this now. I didn't want to wait, and because down the road we're going to talk about this later. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Marino. Let's just get back to the budget. Now,
Okay.
let's give Mike an opportunity to go through the presentation.
So the governor also put $10 million in for practices for reading instruction, and there's also discussion funding that's going to be set aside to reevaluate the foundation aid formula, because as a school district that has a good number of needs in terms of special education students, poverty students, and so on and so forth, we don't feel that the foundation aid formula reflects our population as it should. So there's going to be some discussions about that over the next year. And hopefully, once they figure out how to revise that foundation aid formula, that will adjust our funding appropriately. In terms of the revenue assumptions, the district a few years ago set aside $25 million in fund balance. We received over $140 million over the last 3 years in federal stimulus money. This is going to be the last year of those federal stimulus money. So the $25 million that was set aside in our fund balance was in anticipation of this occurring. We've also committed $10 million into capital projects. It's very important to us that our schools are updated and renovated. This is in addition to the $400 million JSCB project that's going to be going on over the next 10 years as well. And there's $400,000 committed from our Workers' Compensation Settlement Act, and then there's $500,000 increase in the tax levy. We anticipated a slight increase in the pilot revenue of $47,000, an increase in sales tax collection of about $100,000. The legislative budget state aid, including $21.9 million increase in our Chapter 1 accrual. There's an increase, about $3 million in increase of Medicaid reimbursable services, and we see a decrease of about $1.6 million in miscellaneous revenue. With those ARPA funds, stimulus money going away, the indirect cost and interfund funding with that would go down as well. So these are our
Excuse me,
revenue
Mike,
assumptions.
So you're going to be losing ARPA money. And so how are you going to adjust to that? I mean, you put $25 million away for the other.
I want to talk about that when I get to the next slide in terms of our expenses. So when you look at our total state aid, our foundation aid, again, we were hoping for a 4.1% increase. We received 2.8% increase. That's about $12.6 million change, a 3% change there. Transportation aid has gone up. So you understand transportation aid, it's reimbursable the next year. So we're putting the money for it this year, but then we get reimbursed the following year. We're anticipating about $4.9 million change there. Building aid's going to be a little bit less because we've stopped renovating some of those buildings with the previous JSCB till we start the new one, and then all other aids have increased. So our state aid total increase is $21.9 million, which is about 5%. If you look at our adopted revenue, so our total state aid, from our budget last year to this year, it's a 21.9% change. There's the $500,000 of funding from the city. We're going to commit $10.4 million, which was committed of our fund balance for our facilities. There's $25 million of the fund balance, and again, sales tax. So all inclusive, our total revenue increase is about $56.7 million, which is 10.9%. But if you back out the capital, it's a little under 9% with that $10 million backed out that's going directly to capital. So when we talk about how we're going to fund our projects, the first thing, our priority is to continue to put kids first, period. Everything we do is with the intention of what do our students need. We also are working toward improving a sense of belonging for all. We want to increase the student proficiency in literacy and numeracy, which are two of the areas that the community has put forth and explained to us that that's where they would like us to fund. We want to establish a culture of learning and high expectations, and again, continue to engage and involve the community in what we're doing in our buildings. So this is the planning year of the STEAM High School. We've put $3.8 million set aside as we transition into the STEAM High School. The school will be opening in September of 2025, but there is a lot of planning and staffing and hiring that we have to do in the next year or so to get that school up and running. So there's about almost $4 million set aside for that. The Delaware Montessori phase-in, as you know, we're changing Delaware to a Montessori school, and that's a phase-in project, so funding was set aside for that phase-in. And then we want to continue those ARPA initiatives. There are 225 FTEs that were on the ARPA funds that are going away, which is about $19 million worth of salary and benefits. These include additional reading and math supports. These include a number of health and mental health supports that we find that our students are needing more and more now that post-pandemic. There's about $9.2 million of non-staff increases as we do a number of initiatives and engage the community into our schools. So there's about $28 million of the $48 million that we're losing of ARPA funds that are going into this budget. We also have seen some increases in pension rates. TRS has gone up 0.25%. ERS has gone up 2.8%. We've also seen a little bit of a decrease in our healthcare medical claims, but again, we're self-insured, so that, a couple major claims could really impact us on our budget at any time. And we offset this with some of those shifts that we brought over to the budget. So when you look at our total adopted expenses, salary and wages are going to increase $22.6 million, which is a 9.4% increase. The associated benefits with that is $1.8 million, which is a 1.8% increase. We're increasing professional services. Those include purchase agreements, data access subscriptions, continuing some things from ARPA in terms of the mobile hotspots and technology. We have increase in tuition for special education students as well within there. The charter school tuition has also increased $6 million. That's an adjustment that the state made, so now we have to expend an additional $6 million on charter schools. Transportation expense is looking to go up about $7.8 million. Again, we talked about we have 2,400 homeless students that we're transporting. We're running after-school programs in all of our K through 8 schools, as well as some programming in our high schools. So that's an additional expense, as well as we're trying to recruit more bus drivers and bus attendants. And in order to do that, we have to provide them with a favorable salary and wage, which we're working on and being able to increase so that we can attract them, so that we are not dealing with a transportation issue that we have been over the last 2 years.
Ask, if there was a traffic study or plan to be a traffic study done around the new STEAM school and the school that's currently there. I don't have any information on it, but I was told that there have been several students that have been hit by cars going to the bus hub. So I don't know. I'm just relaying what I heard. So I just want to know if there's a study done to prevent any of that.
The traffic pattern is being looked at, as well as the easement that goes through right in front of the school. That's all being talked about, whether we're going to close that down, and that's going to be school. So that piece we're doing. Since I've been in office, I've not heard of any students being hit going across that.
I hadn't heard it either, but
So,
I was like, oh, okay.
I don't know how much truth there is to that.
Tony, since we're in this team conversation, what's the capacity for the first year the students will be there? I mean, how many
250
students?
250 students.
250, that will be
Yes.
for freshman
250
year.
ninth graders will start
Ninth
at school.
grade.
Yes. 150 will be Syracuse City School District students, and 100 students will be from the county.
So if we're not at capacity on year one, then we have students, the ones that are going to be populating the ninth grade, and then have more students for 10th? I mean, can students apply if they're not in the ninth grade?
So if we don't hit capacity for whatever reason, I would think from the county side, we will fill it up with SCSD students.
Okay,
And then that class of 250 will continue to go through.
okay.
Now, Superintendent and Mike, we're paying for the Joint School Construction Board with anticipated state aid, right? Paying the bond back, that's our bonding.
Yes.
And then the county, the STEAM is, they're bonding for that, but we're paying them back on anticipated state aid too, right? So there's two separate entities there, two channels, or what? How's that work?
Yes, there's two separate things happening. The Joint Schools Construction Board is a separate $400 million project, and we're going to start with 3 schools, and then we're going to work our way over 10 years to do a number of schools over those 10 years.
I was on the first one, so but I'm just wondering how that works out financially there.
The STEAM school is being funded by the county. They're doing the renovations. And then once the renovations are all done, we're going to lease the building from the county for 15 years, and we're going to pay them back lease payments each year, which will include the construction cost and the borrowing cost associated with them getting the school up together for us to move in.
Okay, so that comes out of building aid?
So there is about $87 million, I believe, that will be eligible for building aid.
Okay.
And anything over that, in terms of the bonding cost and those other expenses, the school district will be paying for those. The plan for that is that we have a number of projects, of the capital projects I mentioned, we put $10 million aside. We're fortunate that we received 98% building aid on our capital projects. So we will get $9.8 million back of that $10 million. And then when we get the building aid back for some of these capital projects, we will use those funds to offset the expense of the lease that we have to pay.
So those two debt services that we'll have to take care of, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not going to be borrowing for any of the STEAM school. We're just going to be using the reimbursement of our building aid as that comes
As an
in to
extra
offset the
school.
pay,
Okay, I
yes,
got
to
it.
pay that off.
Yeah, okay. What about this Chapter 1 accrual? You could, where you do $31 million, you sort of borrow ahead on future state aid too, right?
Yeah, that's been a system that's been in place for a number of years. I think it's gone back probably about 12 or, let me see, I think it was around 2010, 2011, where the district was short of funding, and they did a Chapter 1 accrual so that additional state aid would come in to offset things, and that's what we've been doing over the past number of years.
So, do we need to do that? I mean, do we need to do it this budget year? Do that 31 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because, I mean, we've gone from 2 years ago where the budget was 480, now it's 578, so it's like $100 million.
And we've increased the number of staff and supports and
Sure.
programs for our students.
I'm just wondering if, borrowing that 31, if it's needed, obviously, but we've been doing it for a lot of
Yeah.
years, right?
Yes.
Mike, got a quick question. So I see here that in terms of the change going forward for 2024 to 2025 budget change is 10.9%. How much of that is all COVID-related added FTEs position?
So there were 225 positions that were added on the last ARPA funding. In addition to that, we had some other federal funding that ended this past year. I'd probably anticipate 40 to 50 staff members that were hired onto that were shifted over. So we've probably added about 280 staff members over the last 3-4 years in terms of
percentage is that?
COVID-related.
What percentage of the total position is that? Do you know?
4,000 employees, probably about 5% increase in staff.
5%. So out of this 10.9% increase, is 5% of that is probably new ARPA added positions?
No,
Going
because
forward?
the 9.4% is the change of the, 9.4 of the salary and wages, and then 1.8 of the benefits. So we've increased about $24 million, but not all of that is the ARPA. It's about $18.8 million of our increase is toward those staff and benefits. But we also have increased some of our purchase services and some of the supports, mental health supports, contracted with outside providers to help support our students and their needs. So I think all told is about $25 million of our $48 million this coming year is ARPA related.
So I think that's two questions in one.
Right.
Because the first part of the question is, even though we may have a few less students, the needs are higher. So we've done a lot with supports, whether it's mental health supports, whether it's reading and math supports. So a lot of that did change, especially since COVID. But then the other side of that is what you're talking about as far as the number of positions we had to switch from losing the ARPA funds over to the regular A budget. And that's because we don't want to lose those positions, which are the supports, many of the supports that we have in place for kids already.
Thank you. And I'll give a chance to other councilors. My other question is, I see that you are starting another Montessori school at Delaware. How is the Lemoyne one working?
That's probably one of the reasons why we started it at Delaware.
Okay. So in terms of improvement, how has the number of kids that go into Lemoyne Montessori in terms of their proficiency compared to the rest of the student? What's that like?
I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head with 30 buildings that we have and where they have academic achievement, but that's something we can get for you.
Right. I would like to know that because, you know, the concept of Montessori, I got exposed to it a couple of years back, and it's a very neat concept, right? And I appreciate the direction where the city's going with it. But I think sometime to tell the story, there got to be numbers and data that is associated to that story. And I would love to see what it is like, how those students in Lemoyne are doing in terms of Montessori compared to the rest of the student.
We need a city councilor, your repository of anecdotes, and I've heard very good things about that Lemoyne Montessori school.
The
So
other
I
side of
welcome it to the West End. That would be great. on
that's
Delaware.
the point. The other side of that is equity, trying to make sure that there's placement in different sides of the city that offers the same types of programs. So just spreading some of those programs out so that different families in different areas have the opportunities as well. Because that's considered a North Side program, even though any of the kids can go there, but it's only so much capacity that it holds. So to open another one was the idea to make sure that other families have that same opportunity.
Is Nada here? Could we make sure that we get that data from the district when we can?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, question. When we lose ARPA funds, how are we going to support mental health support? How, then reading intervention, math intervention? Do we got a plan that when we lose ARPA funds, will we still have these resources available for the students? I know we talk about it. I understand. But I just want to, I wanted to emphasize, do you have a plan right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
It's built into this budget.
And as you can see in your handout, which was the last one, 48.5 FTE social workers that were on ARPA, again, supporting mental health. There's 18 social worker assistants, 17 school counselors, 39 FTE psychologists, in addition to 20 math and 18 and a half reading and 2 AIS teachers, as well as 31 math teaching assistants to support students. So we are doing a lot to continue these initiatives in this budget.
Very important, thank you.
Funding goes to continue education for the teachers themselves.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if
Professional
that,
development.
yeah. So, okay,
Yeah,
so
we
that
put a
is in there.
lot into professional development.
Okay.
One of the other things I just want to mention, we also understood the importance of some of the expertise that we have in the community, and we've brought a lot of our community agencies into our buildings to help us, support our students. Because of all of the trauma and things that they're dealing with outside, we thought it was extremely important for them to have supports in the schools as well. So we do a lot of contracting with some of our community-based organizations.
In terms of the transportation, are you still in a 2 rotation basis, like an earlier?
Yes,
Some
we still
kids
have,
get in the schools earlier than others.
we still have 3 tiers, yes.
So how is that working? I mean, based on
This year,
past-
our attendance was better than previous years. And we found out, surprisingly, that the kids love the earlier start times in high school. We did a poll with them, and overwhelmingly, they chose to stay at an earlier time. But we're still working through that whole process, so we'll be coming forward with a recommendation to the board and ideas about next year's time schedule.
I want to go back to, anybody, because I don't want to.
Go ahead, Councilman Michelle.
I want to go back to the belonging and inclusion idea earlier. Last time we spoke about diversifying the teachers, especially with living in the city and stuff like that. Has that improved at all? The diversity of instructors?
I would say slightly.
Slightly, okay.
Yeah, slightly. Because one of the things that we're doing is trying to develop some of the people that we have. So we have a lot of TAs who have bachelor's degrees already, and getting them to go into teaching, just giving them support to go ahead and finish out whatever they need to get certified. We're doing all those pieces. And then we're trying to encourage more and more people to come into education. It's not an easy task. And to get people from warm weather places to come to Syracuse and stay through a winter is difficult. So we're doing everything that we can to recruit qualified people.
Okay. What are some of
Can't
that?
just be
What are some
diverse.
of that approach? What are some of those approach?
Going to visit other schools, HBCUs, trying to make sure that whoever we know have programs, we're touching base with. We're doing residency programs with a lot of local colleges, making sure that those talents walk into our doors and stay. So many different techniques that we're using to find people that are qualified to work with our students.
Has that improved your attrition rate and retention rate at all overall, those approaches?
It's pretty much a new process, starting last year, at least from this administration. So we'll be able to tell you more towards the end of the year.
And we have partnerships with NYU, SUNY Cortland, SUNY Oswego, as a pipeline to help assist us. And we also provide tuition assistance for some of those teaching assistants that don't have their bachelor's degrees, so that they can go back to school and get their bachelor's degree, so they can come back in and come back as a teacher further down the line. So we are trying to grow our own in a sense.
You've had a career ladder for a long time.
Yes.
And it's worked out really well.
I used it, and I started out as a TA, and I'm sitting here now.
That's two of us.
It's not a budget question, it's just really a comment I want to say, that with all the, the school district deals with in the schools, right, and our amazing babies and our wonderful teachers, I just want council to recognize that, we have to make sure that we are supporting and realizing what is going on in our school district and how we can be a support for them. We have 2,500 babies that are homeless. So we have to remember that, when we're out here and we're doing these things and we're making decisions about community and youth, right? That these are affecting our babies. So we have to, understand. So I just want to make sure I just want to emphasize that.
And when it's appropriate, we just followed a housing meeting, as a matter of fact. So, and I also want to compliment you on, I think the story, especially with Micron coming into town, and the city's going to have to be competitive with some of the people coming in with the suburbs. And I think there's a great story to be told about the city high schools. And I compliment you for making that investment and getting the word out there. Because, many of us city councilors run into the kids all the time, in our daily lives. And there's a lot of terrific kids that go to city high schools.
Yep,
So.
amazing. And Hogan loves CT. Hogan remembers when it was open, right?
Now it's going to be open again.
So can you take us a little bit through the impact of the charters in your budget, in the current budget?
Well, as you know, charters take state aid right away from the schools. And it's a very large expense for every kid that goes to a charter school. And we've been working with our legislature each year, trying to have them adjust that. And thankfully, we have not had a new charter school come in this year, but it just adds more. There are over 2,200 students now that are in charter school, and you think about multiplying that times the state aid per kid that gets pulled from our schools due to the charter schools. And then they've also increased the expense for special education related to those students in the charter schools. The one thing the charter schools can do is they can pick and choose their students. We don't do that. It should be free public education for all students. And a lot of times if a student's misbehaving or a student has some types of issues in a charter school, they easily just say, okay, you're going back to the city schools, which is an unfair thing that they would do to those kids and those families, but it does
It's
happen.
almost like a punishment.
We've also been advocating for a change in the billing process so they don't get all the money up front, and so that we can do our checks and balances before money changes hands. So we're working on some things with the Big Five and trying to make sure that we're advocating for the right things.
And you only mentioned charter schools, but we also pay towards private schools as well. Is it travel, books, and lunch? What is it?
It's travel, it's transportation, it's books, it's software aid, and textbook aid. And also, along with those students that are Title I eligible, those students also get Title I funding as well that we have to maintain. So Title I funding goes to those students as well in those private and charter schools.
I was looking here in the budget, And I don't know how far are we. I was looking to see maybe if there was an indication of maybe a uniform budget. Because I had heard that you guys, a couple of weeks back, maybe President Barnett may speak more to that. I don't know. But it's such a very, very interesting idea that I just been looking forward to see where the district is taking this. So you want to speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely not. We're exploring that with our board first, and when we make some type of determination, we will certainly go down that road.
If you have any uniforms for Henniger High School, let me know. I'm a proud graduate.
You gonna wear a uniform?
He will.
I will wear, I got my Henniger, I got my letter from Henniger. I got it.
Let's go,
I got it. You're a graduate. so
Absolutely.
Oh,
you
y'all
gotta
like
get-
it?
Proud,
Oh,
proud.
nice.
Don't make me start doing the bulldog.
Don't start barking.
I'm gonna add my
We stick
input.
together.
I'm going to add my input into the uniforms. As you know, I've spoken about them before. I'm all for uniforms. They do save money for families. You can recycle them if they're gently used for other youth in the community that may not be able to get what they need. So they are a key piece in focusing students on education as well as saving money for the household.
Okay.
Easier to dress them in the morning.
And just to add to that, I remember coming here as a refugee and going through Fowler High School, and I remember, as we come to this country, we emerge into the mainstream culture, and I remember the cost of sneakers, and the fact that kids were showing up with their best and sometimes not having it, it does something mentally, and it affects how you focus. It adds to the mental health issue. And I remember, everybody showing up, and you just didn't have it. You just didn't have it. And as a city that is dealing with so many things, I think as a community, it's certainly a great conversation to entertain, because it's like Council Rouser, Joe Rouser has said, it can really equalize a lot of things, and it may not solve all our problems, but it can certainly help.
It also grooms youth for workforce lifestyle. So being able to, be uniform later on and, knowing how to appropriately dress.
So thank you for these comments. This is something that I'm sure the board of directors for the school district will take in consideration. Is there anything else?
Any more budget questions?
Right. I think, members of the school board are here, and we appreciate you being
If
here.
you would like to share anything, you're welcome to come to the microphone.
I'd rather, it's still in the beginning stages, I'd rather us just focus on the budget, since it's the budget hearing. It seems like the uniforms and everything would be a separate conversation, since that's not part of the budget.
We're going to have President Barnett with your board. So we're gladly lateralling that to you. How's
I
that?
appreciate the kind words and the support, but what we're prepared for right now is the budget, since we're still in the beginning stages of exploring uniforms.
And to that point, obviously, you get most of your monies from state aid, and as far as there's no line item issues here that the city council can address. But we do, 2/3 of the property tax more or less goes to the city schools, and this, of course, the extra $500,000 would add to that maintenance of efforts.
Yes.
So
we
and
appreciate
I'm
that.
glad you guys,
Thank you.
guys. I'm glad you came here and explained the financial difficulties you're experiencing, and it seems like you're handling it well too, especially
We're
from the
working
school
through it.
on the line too.
Yes. And one thing, it's not in this budget, but we did receive a grant for a refugee welcome center. So that's going to be working through in the next few months to get that going, and hopefully.
Did you finally select a site? I was part of that site selection at some point.
We're working through that, but it does look like we're going to be moving forward with that as well.
That'd be on the north side?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
So-
Thank you. No
So
more.
budget-wise,
Yeah, no
do we have any more questions about budget?
We can go motion
I
to
had a question. Have there been any thoughts about addition to, trades in middle school? Bringing them back to middle schools?
Yes, there is, actually, the board is being presented with an academy model which extends some of the trades and some of the things that our students will be exposed to. And that does seep down into middle schools. And that is our next focus. So it really depends on when we get through that process where things land as to what opportunities will exist in which places. But yes, it's being extended.
Thank you. Last motion.
Anybody else? Is there anything else you would like to share?
No.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And
make a
we
motion
need a
to
motion.
adjourn. Yeah. So moved.
Second.
There we go.
Let's go.
Thank you.